Well, one of the things we're going to do to start off the bat is we're going to play bingo. Ruth's going to explain the rules before we get started as part of our
Okay,
conversation.
sure. Hey, you can download this bingo. It's over on your right side. It's under handouts. You can download it, or you can just mentally play along and mark things. But here are my bingos. I'm going to call them out, and the first person that gets a row across, diagonal or down, is the winner, and we're drawing for a complimentary on-demand workshop of your choice. So here we go. The first one is Read the Emotional Poverty book. The second one is, huh?
How do we respond?
You just say bingo when you win.
I got it.
But you can't win, Ruben. Currently certified on emotional poverty.
What was that?
Currently certified on emotional poverty. The next one is read the AHA Process weekly emails. Anna, I'm going to mute you. Okay. Read the
I guess you only got one bingo, Ruth.
I could have a bingo, right? But I don't. I'm done cooking for 3 years. Okay, the next one is I've started my spring cleaning. I don't have a bingo yet.
I'd say one more, and if we don't have a bingo, we don't give anything out this time.
Oh, I just have 3 more. I personally met Ruby Payne.
Bingo!
Who else? Anybody else? Do I have a bingo? I read a framework for understanding poverty.
Without us. Yeah, we just saw them play that.
All right. I've attended the Addressing of Challenges of Poverty conference.
Bingo.
Who's my bingo?
I said.
All right, Sid. And the last, Sid, I know how to contact you. So we will give you an on-demand workshop of your choice. Thank you for playing. Was anybody else close?
Thank you.
Well, I said bing. Did you all hear my bingo?
Oh,
I had a bingo. Then my webcam's frozen up.
Who else got a bingo?
Yeah, but we can't win, Ruben.
Yeah.
Who else got a bingo? Okay, Sid, we'll be in touch. Let me know if you like playing. We can play again next week with different questions. Okay, Ruby, it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Ruth. Okay, we have 2 guests today. Thank you, Ruth, for doing that. We have 2 guests today. One is Kim Ellis. She's a recently retired assistant superintendent and director of homeless for Waco ISD. And Mary Jane Brockington. She retired as a principal last year, and she's the mentor of 2 current principals. So I thought it would be interesting to have each of them talk a little bit about what they thought were the leadership issues that they were dealing with right now. And I talked about what they have done or their current leaderships are, but 2 questions. What are you thinking about as you get ready to bring students back, and how would you deal with special populations, special ed, homeless, economic disadvantage, etc.? So I've asked each of them to talk about 7 minutes, and then if you have questions, you put it in the question box. Then what we're going to do is give out some ideas about what it looks like when Denmark brought children back to school at the elementary, some suggestions of what it might look like if you bring them back to school at secondary now, and then we have a closing video. But questions in the question box, please entertain those. So Mary Jane, why don't you go first? What are you thinking about as you get ready to leadership and work with your principals as they're bringing students back? And how are they thinking and how are you thinking about dealing with special populations?
Okay, so first of all, webcam's going out, so I apologize. That's going to continue. In talking with those principals and with the superintendent at Lone Oak Public Schools, the biggest thing right now is going to be the social, emotional piece of the kids coming back. Abuse has skyrocketed here in Arkansas to the point we have public announcements, highlighting the number to call to report abuse. So we're talking about what is the quickest way to identify what those kids' needs are, because if we can't get them stabilized socially and their physical needs, then we're never going to be able to educate them. So even Kim and I talked about yesterday a quick survey. How do you make that work K-12? We had some ideas on that, where teachers could quickly identify, not with 100% accuracy, but with some certainty of the kids that need things immediately. So that's one of the biggest things that we think we've got to get ready to address that when the kids come back. And then the second thing we talked about in this district, as I just related to, they are thinking about 25% of the kids are not doing any of the paper packets sent home, which are not real quality, nor are they getting online. So there's no education happening for 25% of this district. So we're talking about once we get them shored up emotionally, socially, in their basic needs, what are we going to do to address the learning needs then? And we've talked about going back, Ruby, to the model we had at Ridge Road, where we identified the basic elements of what the standards, what must every child know, and start in at that point and just work on those basic standards to get kids caught up to that grade level and to move kids forward.
Any comments about your special pops? Special ed?
Right now, they are, in theory, and so I guess legally receiving some services. They're very limited, but like one of the principals told me, that's really a joke. He said the ESL kids are not getting service. He said really the only ones that are being serviced are the ones who are in speech therapy, physical therapy. Those are the ones who are being met. So then they realize that they're going to definitely have to, they'd like to bring extra staff in, extra tutors to try to help with that population. But they also know with the economic parameters, that's probably not going to be possible. On the economic disadvantage, we have talked about, because we know there are children who don't have food, although they are sending school buses out every day to different areas in the community, plus the schools are open for people to come get lunch, and they open that up to being not just to 18 years old, they've opened it up to any age that they live in that community. Then that was somewhat our generosity, but also to keep some federal funding that they had. So we're talking about getting with some churches to go ahead and literally just shore up, having more clothes closets, food closets, ramping up the backpacks, because it's going to be difficult when schools open up to take care of all these kids.
Yeah, one of the issues we had in Baytown several years ago is that when the parents would come in the morning for breakfast with the kids, and they'd sit with the kids and share the breakfast with other younger children. So we knew that was going on.
Yeah, it continues to go on until they, in the state, they put forward a directive from the Department of Ed that allowed them to be able to go ahead and serve other people, in the family. Because I've seen that too, where the parent's sitting there and maybe nibbles a little bit, off of the children's plate. It's heartbreaking.
Right. Yeah, does anyone online listening have a question for Mary Jane you want to ask her? You can put it in the question box or you can unmute yourself. Kim, why don't you go ahead and answer these questions as well? What are you thinking about as you are working with people as they're getting ready to bring their students back and special populations, particularly the homeless?
Okay. Welcome to all. Great to be with you today. One of the things, just to reiterate what Mary Jane said, that we talked about, we live in a community of about 45,000 and about 45 to 50% free and reduced lunch. And so the social emotional component of that becomes, has to come to the forefront. And one of the things that we talked about was that a survey possibility. And I'm focusing more on elementary kids in kind of my answers that I had generated for you today up through middle school. But looking at a survey in pictorial form, I mean, something that even all the way down to pre-K and K can circle, highlight, what was your favorite food? How did you feel with scared faces and, literally something that they can give you information. And I think the pictorial representations would work all the way up through even into middle school, almost because of the fact that they don't have to write anything, but they could express to you their feelings and some of those, and with write-in opportunities to then put their favorite food or some of those type things. I think we're going to have to address this social emotional component with our entire staff. I think we've got teachers, our custodial staff, our cafeteria workers, all of our support people. And I tell you, one of the biggest pieces that I'm concerned about are our administrators and the various levels of administration. Just in the fact that they don't have a lot of folks to vent to, and the pressures of going into all new, unknown territory is very, very challenging. And so I think taking time as a leadership team to really address that bonding piece. How do you bring that back together, so that it's not just business as usual. Okay, start with, schoolwork and straight in. So I think that's going to be an important link. I would encourage, and one of the things that I thought about was looping would be fabulous this year, for particularly at the elementary level, for those teachers who feel comfortable taking on that next grade level content and curriculum, to be able to come back and loop with those kids and then continue that relationship. They know them, they've missed them, bring that back in and let's do this again at a different grade level. But I think the opportunity there, looking at content to be able to address specific content needs and where those children are located, would be much more fluid if you knew where that child had started and you're going to take them on through that next grade. In looking at special populations, that was my last year, and actually last 2 years of work in public school was as the homeless and foster liaison. I don't know where I would be emotionally right now if I was still in that position, because I'm worried enough being 4.5 hours away from those folks about them, just in what they have been through during this challenging time and still are going through and will continue for some time. I think, again, we're going to have to, do a complete resource analysis, going back to looking at framework and the different components of all of the various resources available to that child. Some of our kids, it's a vacation for them. They will never forget in a very positive way. They've done more activities with mom and dad. They've eaten at home more and what have you, even for our low income families, because they were accustomed to having to fend for themselves more anyway. But I really think we're going to have to focus in on our special needs kids. I'm just looking down at my notes here. I think we're going to have to look at, with our special needs, or any of our special populations, the attendance issues. I think we've got a lot of folks that are going to keep kids home at the first sniffle, are going, now if they have a fever, definitely need to stay home. But I think we're going to have to look at our attendance and absenteeism rules and how we handle those. I think schools need to take that into consideration if there's going to be some sort of blended learning because of class sizes, which would mean looking now at a purchase of flash drives for each kid. What kind of computers and what have you are they using? I know in our particular district now, I've been so proud of Duncan Public Schools because they have given literally Chromebooks to all their middle school and high school kids, but have made them available to any student that needed them, and with hotspots to go with that so that they could get online. So they're prepared for that, who's coming back and who may not be, you know, and how they may take a look at that with different opportunities.
Thank you, Kim. Do you have questions? You answered in the question box the thing about looping, which is a great way. Other people have questions you want to unmute, or you want to ask her, or you want to put it in the question box, either Kim or Mary Jane.
Okay.
I have a question. I don't know, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Carla Unke calling, because I can only see you, Kim and Ruby. So
Okay.
I'm a counselor at an elementary school in Clinton, Iowa, and I'm interested in your attendance considerations once we get back. What are you thinking we should take into consideration? I mean, you talked about parents are going to keep kids home for, you know, the least little sniffle, which I think you're right, because we're all going to be a little bit emotionally hijacked when it comes to, you know, oh, what's that sniffle? Is that the coronavirus or whatever, you know? So what sorts of things do you think we should take into consideration, or what attendance policies or things do you think need to be changed as far as that goes? I'm interested in that.
Kim, you want to pick that up?
Go ahead and repeat that for me, Ruby, so I can, you know, I have a hearing loss, and so I read your lips on the screen here as I'm listening. So I don't want to answer the wrong question.
Okay. Her question is, she's very interested in the concept of attendance policies and how you would think about that, because she thinks you're correct that parents will keep their children home.
Well, I think they need to be, that's why I mentioned the flash drives. I think there needs to be some proof of work being done at home. I mean, you know, if there's a difference between taking a sick day and a child being able to have that sick day. But if it's one of those choice situations with a sniffle, then the expectation would be, if I was still the principal, the expectation would be that you can stay home, but here's the work that still needs to be accomplished. And that will be difficult on a day-to-day basis as far as management from the teacher standpoint, unless there is already a set of information that can be downloaded or, you know, what have you. So I don't know what that picture will look like. We've never done that before. Or a live web camera, you know, who knows? My brain just goes all over of how we could possibly handle that. But I think it's an opportunity for them to then have some form of documentation that says I did this in math, I did this in reading. I don't know, something along those lines. But I think we can't penalize parents for wanting to protect their children, even if we may feel that that's an irrational thing to do or not. There's going to have to be some form of compromise.
And to add to what Kim said, one thing I even thought about is the same thing like we do when kids start kindergarten. Typically, in our district, kindergartner doesn't start all day long. They'll come in for part of the day, they'll get picked up part of the day, and maybe even be flexible enough to allow parents, in order to become comfortable, to allow, depending on the age of the students, to come in for part of the day and then go home. And just to sort of build that confidence back with the parents, because the kids will go home and go, yeah, I had a good day, I missed my friends, I'm so glad I'm back. And that allows the children to sort of push the parents a little bit too, that they really want to be back, and just give parents that, just let them take baby steps in feeling comfortable in school again, and seeing what the schools are doing to keep kids safe, in as far as, you know, social distancing and cleaning and things like that.
Thank you. Any other questions about anything that Kim or Mary Jane said?
This is Teresa Rouse. I'm a superintendent in Joliet, Illinois.
Hi,
And here in
Teresa.
Hi, Ruby. In Illinois, we're being asked to actually prepare for 3 contingencies for the start of the school year. 1, we're back to normal. 1, we're still in full remote learning, and 1 that's somewhere in between. So have you, either of you in your locations thought about different contingencies? Because the realities of being back full force into the old way of schooling may not be possible in many of our locations. So have you given thought to any alternate staggered starts, alternating days, anything of that nature that you've had in your thought process so far?
In the high school, we are talking about alternating days to keep the building level lower, where 7th graders come a day. In the high school, it'd be 9th graders come a day, because this is a 9-12, then 10th, 11th, 12th, and try to bring it out like that, or either just break the populations down between 2 grade levels to keep the burden down and keep everyone spread out a little bit more. We also talked about that in doing that, you still have the same full staff of teachers. So going back to the kids who are behind, who haven't been learning, there's that set of extra teachers that can take those kids to the side and do extra one-on-one work or small group work with those kids as the other instructors are moving forward.
And it's interesting you brought that up, Teresa, because can you see the slide? The slide showing?
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm going to insert here something, because Denmark has started back with elementary schools.
Mhm.
And I have up on the slide the rules at this Denmark elementary school. They had pictures online, but I couldn't get them to download. It was a New York Times article. So they only started back in elementary schools a couple weeks ago, and here were the rules. Parents are not allowed inside, and they made kids enter through multiple doors. Teachers were not allowed to gather in the staff room. Each child had their own desk, and it was 6 feet from any other child. They did some subdivisions in 2 or 3 smaller groups, and they did some instruction outside, virtually no group. At recess, they could only play in small groups. They made them wash their hands every hour. They had steps in the hallway to show how far apart they had to stand. They had staff that cleansed the doorknobs at least twice a day, and they ended school at 2 p.m. So I got thinking about, nobody, to my knowledge that I've been able to find, has reopened secondary schools. So having been a high school teacher for 9 years, I thought, and department chair, I thought, I wonder what that would look like. So part of one thing's ideas here for conversation, but secondary schools are already comfortable, many of them are, with the AB schedule. Only it's about which courses they have on what day, but you could take that AB schedule and split the student body in half and say, okay, A students come on Monday and Wednesday, and B students come on Tuesday and Thursday. And then on the A schedule day, you cut it even further, and half the students come 3 hours in the morning. So you would split literally the school population into fourths, and the other half come in the afternoon for the A schedule day, same for B schedule day. And the day the students don't come to school in person, they would do their learning online. Then A scheduled students would come in on Monday and Wednesday, but no students would come on Friday, and Friday would be for teacher prep. And then you could have evening school of 2 hours for reteaching, coaching, and credit recovery with paid staff or tutors. And then you would only do student testing in school when they're in school. I read not too long, last week, one of the things that was documented in Germany is a 10-year-old kid. He had to take a test at home. He just sat in front of Alexa and asked all the questions and got 100% on his test. And so the bottom line is going to be, how do you verify they know what they actually, who's doing the work, and that they're comfortable with the information. So I will open it up now to ideas or thinking about this. Teresa, since you're superintendent, what do you think?
Well, I think we have to try to figure out multiple ways to make this work. My biggest concern in our district is going to be logistics when it comes to only portions coming different parts of the day because of the busing,
Yes.
because of the level of, where can our parents even make that work with childcare? We're a K-8 district, a pre-K-8 district, and so we already we don't have high school, but my junior highs do work on an AB schedule. But like one of my junior highs has 1,200 students in it. To even break that down even into fourths is still an awful lot of people in a building, given some of the social distancing requirements. And we don't have the physical space necessarily, even an elementary classroom, without parsing it down even farther to spread out the students in some of those classrooms. We have very old buildings and there's not a lot of flexible space. So I'm really struggling in my own mind how we're going to make this work if we're not back full-time, everybody in the room, which like I said, I don't believe we're going to be able to be. I think we're going to have different options. So we're in conversations around, what we can do, how we can make that happen. I'm seriously concerned about the achievement gap. I'm concerned about the equity gap. My district is high poverty. We're like 92% free lunch, and so everybody gets free breakfast and lunch. We've been serving over 40,000 meals a week in our grab and goes. So I'm just really concerned about how far behind our students are going to be coming in. We're doing some good stuff right now, but it's not what they would get in the classroom. So there is that whole intervention piece that's going to have to be huge coming back into the scene for the school year. But again, if we're in and out because of the virus, because they're already predicting in the fall it's going to probably hit again, and we're going to all be in remote learning for a period of time in the fall again. And so they're telling us now, they're like, so you need to get really good at this so you're doing it better. Okay. So what does that look like? Like that's great advice. But yeah, so we're still in the midst, Ruby. We're not even close to what a plan would be right now, but we've got to get closer within the next few weeks. So I'm tuning into every possible webinar, Zoom meeting. I've been on so many electronic meetings, just picking the brains of every superintendent I know, trying to get different ideas so that we can have things to think about.
Thank you, Teresa. Kim, do you have any comments you want to make? Okay. Anybody else online want to make comments about days? Feedback, questions?
I think the secondary plan is wonderful. I think it would work well, very well for any district here for us.
Well, I had one other idea along this secondary idea, because would be another way to split kids. And you could split them this way. You could take the students who are already excelling and already are comfortable in online, okay? And you could keep them permanently online. And what you could do then is take maybe only one day a week they came in. And for the students who are having difficulty or got way behind, one of the things I was thinking about is they could come in more frequently. So in other words, this first plan I laid out here is just logistics, but you might be able to do logistics against achievement levels or levels of ability to handle the online learning. I mean, that might be another way to think about it. So I don't know. I think, Teresa, you're exactly correct, because this model I laid out here is heavily dependent upon having a fairly flexible transportation schedule. And not everybody has that.
It's also about feeding, though, isn't it? Because, federal funding comes from how many meals you push out every day.
Right. And the other thing I was thinking is that already in Orange County, California, this online learning has generated a lot of conversation from not just California, but everywhere about the demands on teachers and how teachers' work life has just taken on extra levels of preparation, etc. So one of the things I think, however that schedule's built out for coming back, there has to be things in there for teacher preparation. And that's why I put Friday as a whole day for that. Because if they're managing this schedule on all 4 days a week, they're going to have 3 and 3 hours. They're going to have time for preparation. So, I don't, any comments from anybody else online?
Yeah, Jan says it is critical that students work together. Maybe the group work could be achieved online, but that may be a nightmare for those who don't have access.
Yeah, and I think and the whole thing that happens is the socialization opportunities for students. So one of the reasons I didn't put that idea out there about by level is academic level, is that cuts socialization in person. Now you can take Zoom and divide it into smaller groups, but the issue is there's a piece of socialization that comes from being in person. So it'll be interesting to see how it rolls out.
And I think, Ruby, one of my biggest concerns is the whole intervention remediation component of how do students get that additional help, particularly with that combination of online learning, and being able to monitor what they are really able to do. Just case in point, a 13-year-old grandson, I said, how you're doing with schoolwork, and he let it slip unintentionally that it's great if you Google answers on your iPad while working on the computer, but how much is he actually going to remember, if he's not thinking back about things and literally just, click. But that's a concern for me, is the students who really have needs, who need that continuous remediation. How are we going to work with that? And I don't have answers for it. It's just one of my concerns.
That's why in this model I built in that evening school, but that's problematic as well because of childcare, because of adult responsibilities, etc. Go ahead.
I forgot who was saying something about the meal being an issue if kids are at home while they're being schooled. I don't know if you can get waivers or if this is even applicable, but maybe something similar to the backpack program where if they come to school once a week, they get meals enough for a week's worth, through a waiver or some sort of special condition. Now, I know the other issues are at hand, but that's just one possible layer.
Deanna says she's a science teacher and she does a lot of group work and hands-on activities and shared supplies for her lab. Her restructuring as a teacher will take time. Has anybody else thought through that piece?
Anybody want to?
Could you give me more information on what do you mean by restructure? I mean, I know my head's going in 10 different directions.
How is she going to teach? How's she going to plan to teach when her kids are at home, but she did group work, shared lab tools?
Well, I think one of the big losses. Yes, go ahead.
Another question
I don't know.
is, should you keep the students together even if you aren't looping the teacher?
That's an interesting idea. Anybody want to comment about that, Mary Jane?
Well, from our experience, prior, Ridgeroad was looping. The idea of looping wasn't, and I've done looping even teaching in higher grades. It isn't about keeping the kids together. It's keeping the teacher with the kids that knows those children's learning styles. That teacher knows the children's deficits. And so it's more about the teacher staying with them. Of course, it is nice if the kids can stay together, but it's more about the instructional piece, and to me, in looping than it is the social piece. But
Well-
looping definitely works.
That's true. And it's also that connection already with the parents and
Yes,
already knowing
oh,
who
that's a
their
big tip.
caregivers are and more about their situation and resources. Good point.
Yes.
Well, I'm looking at our time frame here. We're always done by 12:15. I want to show you a video I got, and the video I think is just speaks to the ability of humans to, even in the most adverse situations, to continue on and bring joy to the situation. So I wanted to end with this and thank everybody for being on. And here it is. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
And next week, we're going to talk about diversity issues in COVID and immigration issues. Ruben and Cheston will be on with us. So we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank
Thank you.
you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good week.